traveling all over the country, it's funny. I got invited to speak to a CEO group recently. And I always love going and doing groups like that. This is a C-level business, an entire group of CEOs for big corporations. And it's so funny. Every time we do that, we talk about strategic planning, and we talk about leadership, and we talk about management styles, and setting the right goals and asking the right questions. But it's interesting to me because I always want to go back to, I ask a simple question while I'm sitting there, and I ask it at the very beginning. So when was the last time you focused on building a team of allies? And I get weird looks. You get chuckles or eye rolls or the eyebrow raise. And I can tell which ones haven't read my book in the audience because I make a big point of that. But building your team of allies. And so we'll go on and we'll talk about strategic planning. We'll talk about the vision for the future and how do we grow that business and how do we expand and how do we open up to seize opportunities and recognize opportunities and capture those opportunities and do this big presentation about growing that C-level corporation and taking it into the direction, into growth, that stable growth for the future, long-term planning. And then we come back to building a team of allies. And I tell this phrase, and this was something I heard a long time ago that really just stuck with me. Because I've seen this in so many companies in my own career, and then I've seen it for companies I've come in to speak to or I hear about it during a cocktail hour before I get up to speak to a big group. And it's a simple thought. A team is a group of people working towards a common goal. Pretty easy, right? I mean, everybody would agree with that. Factions, on the other hand, factions is a group of people or individuals working towards their own goal. You cannot succeed as a team of factions. And so when I was speaking to the CEO group, I just had to throw that out. I was so compelled to throw that out. When was the last time you worked on building a team of allies? And I have to go back to every time I speak I do a big corporate event. There'll be 500 people or 600 people in the crowd. And I'll try to hang around beforehand and try to meet someone, talk to them, and figure out what they do. Oh, you're in accounting, or oh, you're in human resource, or oh, you're in sales. And if I could ever help, just let me know. And here's my contact information. Because I love getting in on the ground level. And so when I was talking to the CEO group, the question was, when was the last time you worked on building a team of allies? Because I make a big point of that, because the company doesn't move from the top down. The company moves from the bottom up. That day-to-day grind, what we call the wheel people. Okay? So those are the cogs on the wheel. The people that are paying the bills every day, the people that are going out and making the sales calls, and the people that are doing the accounting, and the people that are sending the invoice. It's all of the ground level people. If they stop working, your company goes nowhere, and it doesn't matter how good your strategic planning is. It doesn't matter how great your budget is if you got no one bringing business in the door, and it doesn't matter how much business you bring in the door if you have no one in accounting to invoice it, or no one in accounting to collect it, or no one in customer service to take the orders. And so I did a presentation for them, and I went in and we tied it into all of this strategic planning and all of that motivating and all of the goal setting and asking the right questions. And all of that was on their level. And then we start filtering it down. And the number one thing I get from people, from employees, when I go in and do these big corporate events, the one word I hear is ownership. Ownership. And they're not talking about financial gain. They're not talking about profit sharing. They're not talking about getting bonuses or anything like that. What they're talking about is owning a little piece of the goal, owning a little piece of the direction, having that input, knowing where they're going. And you have so many people that worked in the military, that came up in the military and that sort of structure. And that was what was taught in the 70s and 80s and early 90s of Management 101. Was give your edict, and then everyone falls in line and everyone follows, and if they don't like it, they can go somewhere else. We're not in that world anymore, guys. We're not in that world. There are a lot of options for other people, and you can be left behind if you're not innovating and you're not asking for that input. And so building your team of allies is so much more than just having a group of yes people. Building your team of allies is giving that little bit of ownership, that little bit of input to all of the people on the ground level. They're the ones that are seeing the change. They're the ones that see the day-to-day change, and they see what the competition is doing. Not what the competition CEO says they're doing, and not what the shareholders say they're doing, and not what the public statements say they're doing. What they're actually doing on the ground level. And that's the most important part. That's the most important intel. That's the most important information you can have. What's actually going on at the ground level? One, what they're telling you. Two, are your customers buying it? Okay? If your customers aren't buying it, they're not much competition. If your customers are buying it, boy, you got a problem. If you're not anticipating and you're not watching those trends and you're not giving that little bit of ownership into the direction. That's building a team of allies. That's the fun part. When you can take your grand vision and when you tie it into strategic planning, we tie it into asking the right questions and we tie it into goals and motivation. And then you start filtering it down. And you say, okay, I had this plan. Now let's wash it through. Let's ask our team. Not factions, our team. Let's ask our team, hey, what do you think about this? How can we make it better? How can you in accounting make it better? How can you in sales make it better? How can you in customer service make it better? How can we make it better? That's building a team of allies.